It's Twitter Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen, and we have a huge listener mailbag for you on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. That's coming your way right after this.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, and today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the games start. And on today's Locked On Giants podcast, we have a huge, and I do mean huge, Twitter Tuesday mailbag. We have about 20 questions, a little bit of overlap here and there, but I'm going to go through all the questions. I'm going to do about, about maybe 6 per segment. So let's hop right into it because, like I said, we have a lot of ground to cover, and I want to make sure I get all the questions that were submitted answered. So let's go ahead and kick things off. We're going to start off with Peter Panagos, who asks, is it possible we bring in some league minimum veteran wide receivers? I know we're a weird 4-1 team, but still, don't we owe it to ourselves to at least try? Okay, Peter, the Giants just today, Monday, as I record this, signed Robert Foster to their practice squad. So Robert Foster was the guy with them earlier in the spring. They cut him, I think, because he had an injury issue. Actually, I think he got an injury settlement. That settlement has now expired, and because he knows the system, they have brought him back. So, yes, they are looking to bring guys back, but they have to be careful, Peter, because they don't have a lot of money. And you're going to hear me say that a lot on this show. They don't have money to spend on guys, and they have to kind of prioritize where they're going to spend. You know, right now, the tight ends are kind of getting the job done. Saquon Barkley's getting the job done. You know, Darius Slayton stepped up. We'll see if he's able to sustain that. So you don't want to go too crazy, I think, with signing guys if you've got other needs that you have to address. But thanks for the question. All right, Huckleberry Nacho asks about realistic wide receiver ones that the Giants can go after. Huckleberry, like I said before, the team doesn't have money. And even if they did, there's no wide receiver one, I think, out there. If there was, he'd be on a team. Come on. If a guy were a starter or a wide receiver one, he would probably be on a team by now. But the Giants don't have money to do this. You know, I keep saying this every week. You guys keep asking me, who are they going to sign? Who can they bring in? If they can't get somebody at a bargain basement price, it ain't happening. And I don't see a wide receiver one signing for a bargain basement type of a deal. I'd be stunned if it happened. So sorry to disappoint you on that, but that's just where they're at right now. So, all right. Ed English, excuse me. Is Saquon doing enough, assuming he stays healthy the rest of the year, to be back with the Giants as the highest paid running back in the league next year? All right, Ed, that's a great question. I think Saquon is doing enough to warrant a second contract as of right now. Would I make him the highest paid running back in the league next year? Probably not. I would be reluctant to do that because, look, you're going to probably have to address the quarterback, because Daniel Jones, and I know I've got a question about this coming up, but Daniel Jones is somebody you're going to have to probably re-sign if he keeps up the way he's been going. You're also going to maybe want to get Dexter Lawrence's number down. You're probably going to want to maybe extend Andrew Thomas, who's coming up for renewal. So you can't go putting all your eggs into one position basket. And as valuable as Saquon has been, I don't know that I would make him the highest paid running back. I would be very leery to do that if it's my call. Now, will Joe Shane agree? That remains to be seen. But I do think, given what Saquon has done through, the first few games of the season, he has warranted a second contract. If he stays healthy, he will get that second contract. Thanks for the question. Satoshi Wakamoto, isn't it time for the Giants to bring back the retro jerseys permanently? They look so much better. Plus, the current jerseys are a symbol of losing and need to be tossed in the bin. All right, Satoshi, they won, I think, 2 Super Bowls with the current jerseys. So I wouldn't say they're a sign of losing. I know what you were getting at, but they did win Super Bowls with the current jerseys. But to answer your question, I love the current retro jerseys. I mean, I grew up on them. If they brought them back permanently, I'd have no problem with that. So, I doubt they will because, the thing is teams have to have an alternate jersey for marketing purposes, and they get, they put out these retro jerseys and whatnot, and fans who are the newer generation who maybe weren't alive in the 80s and the 90s when those jerseys were popular, they're like, oh wow, these are cool, so we've got to buy yourselves one. So it's all about marketing. And so I don't know that they would switch, but hey, if they did, like I said, I'd sign up for it in a heartbeat. All right, next we hear from Huge DAS Priest, Huge G16. And yes, I know if I had sounded it out what it would be. Um, who is an unsung assistant coach we should know because the staff is working some devil magic? All right, I'm going to give you 2. I'm going to give you one on each side of the ball. On offense, Andy Bischoff, the tight ends coach. Look at what that tight end group, an unheralded group of tight ends, is doing. They're contributing. They're in the passing game. They're blocking well, helping out the offensive line. They've helped settle that offensive line, which, if you remember earlier in the season, the pass blocking wasn't great. It has gotten better because of the tight ends. So I think Andy Bischoff is one guy. On the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to go with Jerome Henderson. And I've said this before. Matter of fact, I did a piece on Henderson not too long ago on Giants Country. Given the injuries that they have had to that defensive secondary, Henderson gets those guys ready to play. I mean, you see guys like Nick McLeod and Justin Lane and Pinnock. They were all making plays, and you're thinking to yourself, how is this possible? Jerome Henderson is how it's possible. And all the guys I talked to about him cannot say enough good things about Jerome Henderson. He's just a really, really good coach, former NFL defensive back, in case you didn't know. So he's been there, done that, has an idea how the position should be played, what to look for, and he can really, really help these guys out, and he does. So those would be my 2 picks for you in response to your question. Great question, by the way. All right, John Fiorente. I hope I said that right. I'm bad with last names, folks. I apologize. When Shepard went on IR, does his salary not count against the cap anymore for the season? John, all players, with the exception of suspended guys, count against the cap. IR, PUP, practice squad, reserve lists. If a player is suspended, the team gets a salary cap credit based on the number of weeks the player is suspended without pay. But to answer your question, Sterling Shepard does count against the salary cap, even though he's on IR. All the IR guys do. So hope that answers your question. All right. Let's see. Kyle Mahoney, what's your prediction for the rest of the season? And when do you see our guys coming back from injury? All right, Kyle, for your first question, I'm staying with 8 and 9 for my prediction for this team. They're halfway there. Could they maybe eke out, maybe go 9 and 8? Possibly. But look, they're going to lose they're going to lose some games. They're not going to win straight out. I'm staying with 8 and 9 for my prediction. But we'll see how they come through these next few weeks and where they're at the bye, and then maybe I'll revise it. And you also asked about injured guys and when they are coming off of IR. Probably, I would say most of them, I would look for after the bye week, but it really depends on when they have a roster opening. You can't just say, okay, you know what? For example, Rodarius Williams, you're available. We're going to bring you back off IR when maybe they have what they need at cornerback, and maybe receiver needs more attention. So it's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, and it's kind of a hard question to answer. I don't think you're going to just see like all the players at once come off IR, but I think a lot of them will probably start to come off IR. I would say probably start to look for them after the bye week. The bye week, they've got an extra break and whatnot. So I think that might be when they start to bring guys back, if they have openings, that is. So, all right, Giant fans, we've got a super big Twitter Tuesday going on right now here on the Locked On Giants podcast. More of your questions coming up right after this. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Twitter Tuesday in just a moment. But first, BetOnline is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game, both college and NFL. And BetOnline doesn't stop there. It's your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the games start. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Twitter Tuesday. I am Patricia Traina. We've got a huge mailbag this week, and I'm really enjoying these. This is my favorite show to do of the week. And before we get into the rest of the questions, tomorrow, I hope to have a special interview with a former player for you. I mean, it's scheduled for Tuesday morning. I have every reason to believe it will take place. It won't be a long one, but it should be up. And I'm not going to tell you who it is, but I think y'all will want to tune in and check this out. So that's on tap for Wednesday. Thursday, of course, the crossover show. Kevin Ostreicher and I will break down the Giants and Baltimore Ravens, who are playing this weekend at MetLife Stadium. And then Friday, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, to do another live show, not just with the entertainer, but with Bad Dog. That's right. You've been asking me to have Bad Dog on the program. Bad Dog reached out to me last week and said he'd be interested in coming on the program with me. So imagine that. Traina, Tana, and Bad Dog. Oh my gosh. That's going to be a must-see stream. So that's the plan for this week here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Appreciate you tuning in, as always, the feedback, everything, and just looking forward to bringing you more great content here on the Locked On Giants podcast. All right, let's get back to your questions here on this Twitter Tuesday. Ludovic asks or says, I didn't think they'd win, but they did. Holy cow. Are these Giants for real? And if not, might they be when the injured folks come back? Ludovic, yeah, I think, this team is overachieving, which is a good thing. They are winning. You wonder what they would be like if they'd had a full, healthy squad that was actually performing. They would probably be that much better. But yeah, coaching has been the biggest difference for this team. The coaching has been phenomenal. And, I can't say enough good things about it, the coaching. They're prepared, these guys. I mean, you got guys contributing that I bet you if I told you at the start of the year that they would contribute, you'd probably say, no way, they're not going to contribute. They're scrubs. They're getting, they're Jags, just another guy to step up. Guys that have been bouncing around the league, haven't really found a home on a team's roster. And that's again, a testament to the coaching staff and the job that they have done. So, yeah, the Giants they're for real. I mean, you're not dreaming the 5-1 start, but I'm sorry, the 4-1 start. You're not dreaming that, but still a lot of room to grow and work to be done before this team really takes that next step forward. So, thanks for the question. All right. Up next, we hear from, House of Havoc. With so many injuries on defense right now, especially with Leo and Aziz, what are you hearing of the possible call up for Quincy Roche at outside linebacker, or are Smith and Collins holding it down? All right. I haven't heard anything about Quincy Roche being called up. Smith would be Jalen Smith, I'm assuming, who's not really, he's an inside linebacker. I think maybe you were wondering about, Ellerson Smith, who's on IR? I don't know, but Jalen Smith is a inside linebacker. Aziz is an outside linebacker, two different positions. And Landon Collins isn't even, playing yet. He's on the practice squad, has to get acclimated. So, I know what you were kind of asking, but the guys that you mentioned, Havoc, not the guys I think you wanted to that are applicable in this case. But that being said, the Giants are getting a pass rush. Jihad Ward is contributing in that regard. Dexter Lawrence is contributing in that regard. Kayvon Thibodeaux is contributing. So they are getting a pass rush, a little bit more than what they had last time. So, yeah, I don't know that there's going to be a need for Quincy Roche unless the injury bug really hits that unit hard again. So thanks for that question. Okay, up next, Vinny Pace asks, do you think they sign both Barkley and Jones this offseason? All right, disclaimer. As I record this, it is October 10th. So I'm going off of what I have seen as of October 10th. This doesn't mean that, what I've seen as of October 10th is what I'm going to be seeing when the season's over. So to answer your question, Vinny, yes, I do see a scenario where both guys could be back. Now, I am purposely waiting to do anything with putting together contracts until the bye week. That's going to be my bye week project. One of my bye week projects is to put together what I think the Giants will need to, propose to get Daniel back and to get Saquon back. So that's coming. But yes, I do think that as of right now, both of them are making a very strong case to be re-signed. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me about Daniel Jones. They're going to say, oh, the jury's still out. Oh, his numbers stink. Yes, the numbers aren't great, but the guy's making good decisions. He's, shown his toughness. He's shown, an ability to command the huddle. And the biggest thing that we're seeing this year with Daniel Jones that we haven't seen in the past is that his teammates are really stepping up and acknowledging him as a leader. And by that, I mean, if you go back to the Dallas game, a lot of the players in the locker room were sitting there lamenting and shaking their heads and saying, we let DJ being Daniel Jones, we let him down. So that to me says that this team is starting to really embrace him as a leader. And then, with the coaching staff, just this past weekend out in London, Brian Dable, unsolicited, praised Daniel Jones in his opening statements. So, yeah, there's a fondness growing. Daniel's, I guess, starting to grow on this team. And, so far, so good with him. So I know, again, a lot of you, or there's some of you, I should say, who are like, get rid of the guy. Not so sure that that's going to happen just yet, but we'll see. Still a lot of football to play and still a lot of, pieces that need to fall into place. So we'll see what happens. All right. Independent Outsider asks, what exactly, if anything, can the Giants do before the trade deadline with this cap situation? How realistic is it for Gates to return? And how would his return affect the cap? And with our injuries, is there anyone left to cut or trade? I'm sorry, to help with cap space for a trade. All right. So, trade deadline. All right. Let's talk about that first. Right now, the Giants are 4-1. They have several young core pieces that if I'm Joe Shane, I'm not moving. All right. The Giants aren't in a position like, say, the Carolina Panthers, who I think, according to reports, are going to have a fire sale. after firing Matt Rule, their head coach. So, really the only guys who might draw something in a trade, you could make a case for Saquon Barkley. You definitely could make a case for Andrew Thomas, maybe for safety Xavier McKinney, maybe for Dexter Lawrence. You really want to see this team trade away good players? You don't need to. I mean, I get it. They're still rebuilding, but this particular rebuild didn't necessitate tearing the whole thing down and starting from scratch. They were left with some good players. So I just, I don't know who else there is to trade. At this point, I wouldn't even trade Darius Slayton given the situation at receiver. And he would have been the guy that I would have maybe, spoken about for a trade. So, all right, you asked about Nick Gates. Nick Gates counts against the cap whether he plays or not. Like I said in the earlier segment, all guys, PUP, IR, active roster, reserve lists, they all count. So, forget about the cap and any kind of relief there, unless the Giants extend him to lower his cap number. At this point, though, I don't know if they're going to do it. To me, I think it makes sense. I know I put that out on Twitter, like I think it was last week, and a lot of people are like, yeah, that's a good idea. And a couple people are like, what are you, crazy? So, as far as when Gates is going to be ready, he's got a 21-day window dating back to last week. So he's about 7 days in, or will be as of Wednesday. So a decision's got to be made within 21 days from the time he was designated to return from PUP. And then you asked about guys who could be cut. Again, who are you going to cut? This team is banged up. I'm wondering if you're thinking in terms of Kenny Golladay. They're not cutting him. If they cut him, his roster bonus that's due next year accelerates into this year's cap. And you're just not doing it. It's a non-starter. It's not going to happen. So, I think that this roster has been cut down to the bone. And you're not going to touch Kenny Galladay's contract to get cap relief. So you just got to pray that the money you have gets you through the rest of the year. Tough, but it can be done. All right. Thanks for that question. Up next, we hear from Jeremy Davis. Is it unrealistic to think we could be a 12-win team this season? Jeremy, anything is possible. I mean, that's why you line up and you play the game. Anything is possible. Now, is it realistic? I still say I'm sticking with 8 and 9. I want to see how they come through the second month of the season, going into their bye week. I may revise my prediction based on what they do. But I don't think the Giants are going to, like I said in the first segment, I don't see the Giants winning straight out. So, yeah, that would be kind of a tall order, I think. So, because let's see, they played 5 games. So there's how many games left? 5 games, about 12 games left. I don't know. I think that's a stretch, Jeremy, if I'm being honest with you. I really do. But hey, if it happens, I'll take it. I'm sure we'll all take it. So, all right. Next, we hear from Ruben Martinez. What are your thoughts about Breida and Brightwell and how they did when called upon? All right, Ruben, I thought they did very well. And, like I was saying in the first segment, a lot of guys who, you would consider towards the bottom of the depth chart in the 53, they stepped up and they delivered. And that's a testament not just to the players, but to the coaching. So Brightwell, the one thing about Brightwell's game that I'm not crazy about is his kick return game. Not impressed by that, but as a running back, he's certainly shown me something. Same thing with Breida, who knows the system. So very happy with what I've seen from those two guys. So thanks for that question. Antonio Ruiz, being that the Giants are stacking up wins and have a good chance of making the playoffs, over exceeding expectations. Do you think Joe Schoen pulls the trigger on some moves before the trade deadline? Again, who are they going to trade? I don't know if Shane's going to trade draft picks away. I certainly wouldn't if I'm him. because you want to have assets in case you want to move up next year in the draft. I would not be stunned if at this point the Giants stand pat. All right. There's no need to have a fire sale right now. Um, there are guys they could trade, but they're blue chippers, and I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't trade Dexter Lawrence. I wouldn't trade Leo Williams. I wouldn't trade Andrew Thomas or Xavier McKinney. I mean, you've got to leave yourself with some pieces to build. So I would be surprised if Shane trades anybody this year. I think moving forward, he'll have more flexibility to do that. But this year, it's all about evaluating. And if you don't trade somebody this year, remember, you can always trade them in the off season, you know, get the trade in line if the guy's under contract and look to move somebody then if you need to. But again, who are you going to trade? I just don't see it. So. All right. Big City Lou, longtime follower, just saying the work you put in is tremendous. Thank you. With the way the season has unfolded, which assistant coach has had the more challenging personnel issues to scheme around? Ooh, excellent question, Lou. And by the way, thank you for the kind words. Um, I'm going to go with Wink because of the injuries. The injuries at cornerback, not having Thibodeaux and Azeez Ojulari for the first couple of games, and now he's without Ojulari again, not having Leo Williams. I think Wink Martindale has had a tougher time with scheming around guys who are missing. Now, that said, Kafka has had some challenges because he's just not getting anything out of his receivers. Those guys have been banged up and missing too, but Kafka's done a pretty good job of, leaning on the tight ends, like I said earlier, to get some production out of there. Whereas I think Wink, the defensive line, the edge rushers, and the cornerbacks, that you're talking three positions that have been, really a problem for him. And he's done a really good job getting those guys to play at a high level. So hats off to Wink. Hats off to all the coaches on that staff. They've done really a great job. And, you've heard me say it before, and I'll say it again. Coaching makes a difference. So, all right, Giant fans, we have about 5 more questions left in today's episode of Twitter Tuesday. We'll get to those remaining questions right after this. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Twitter Tuesday edition of the LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, fall can be chaos for us when we're outdoors. 1 minute we're overheating and the next minute we're freezing. So to be ready for anything, you need to start with great underwear that can handle everything. Tommy John underwear. Tommy John underwear is comfortable to wear. Their breathable, lightweight fabric has 4 times the stretch of competing brands. They come with a no wedgie guarantee, thanks to a non-rolling waistband and legs that never ride up. With over 17 million pairs sold, people love Tommy John underwear. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers. They have fanatics. Plus, everything is backed with Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear or its free guarantee. Go to TommyJohn.com/lockedon right now to save 20% off your first order. Again, that's TommyJohn.com/lockedon for 20% off your first order. See site for full details. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the LockedOn Giants podcast. You got Patricia Traina here, and it is a Twitter Tuesday. We are answering 20 of your questions. So we've got about 5 more or so left on today's episode, and then we'll call it a day. Let's get into the remaining questions received all via Twitter today. There were no email questions received that I know of. So thanks to everybody who jumped in on Twitter. And by the way, if you got your question in late and you didn't hear it answered on today's show, send it in again anyway, because I do a mailbag on Giants Country. So whatever questions come in after I finish taping, I usually pick them up in the mailbag for Giants Country. So I'm never leaving you guys, waiting too long to have an answer to your questions. So, all right, let's pick it up with Gandalf 5611. How do you think Kayvon Thibodeaux is doing so far? Any thoughts on his progress? All right, Gandalf, I think Thibodeaux At times looks like a rookie, but I like the direction he's headed. I thought against the Packers, he had a slow start to the first half. I fully believe he was responsible for Mercedes Lewis sneaking into the end zone there for that touchdown. I think that was his guy to cover. So, all right, it's a rookie mistake. He's a rookie. Let's remember that. But as the game went on, I thought Thibodeaux got better. And I've said this before when it comes to players. The great pass rushers are not always going to get sacks every time. Lawrence Taylor, the GOAT, didn't get a sack on every snap he played, but he influenced the game just by being out there. Thibodeau's not at that point yet where he's drawing double and triple teams, but he is showing signs of being able to influence the game. And I just think this young man, as he learns the nuances and the little tricks and trades of the game, he's going to get better and better and better. So I'm really, really excited about his presence. I'm excited about his development. And I think this young man has a really bright future lying ahead of him. So thanks for that question. All right. Chris Caulfield asks, I've agreed with you so far in strategy not to sign players because of the salary cap situation. But with the Giants 4-1, does that change your thought process at all? No, it doesn't. The money is what it is. You've got, let's see, they're 5 games in. They've got 12 more games to go. You don't have money to re-sign guys unless you go and you create money. All right. So no, I mean, the cap is bad, people. I say this every week, and it's really bad. I think in normal circumstances, if they had a little healthier cap, Joe Shane would absolutely maybe look to extend some guys, take advantage of lower cap money, lower cap numbers and stuff like that, to give himself more room for the following year. He doesn't have that luxury. The only way, like I said, is to touch Kenny Galladay's contract. That ain't happening. Maybe you look at Nick Gates, but I don't know if they're going to do that. And trust me, I have looked at that roster and I'm having a hard time finding places where they could get money. So I just think they've got to make do with what they've got. I really do. And just hope that they don't have such a rash of injuries that they have to, really sign a lot of guys. And, in addition to what they're planning to do with promoting guys from the practice squad and all that stuff. So yeah, the salary cap situation, it's bad. I keep saying it, and I'll keep saying it until, you're sick of me saying it the rest of this year. So, but thanks for the question. All right, James A. Question about coaching staff. Kafka will probably want to be around a while. However, Wink wants to be a head coach. How long do you see him being around? Will he be one and done? Are they developing a pipeline for coaches so that when guys like Wink leaves, someone else steps up? James, I think it's a little too premature to talk about that. I mean, yes, I know Wink wants to be a head coach. Could he potentially leave if he continues to have success? Sure. But it's only year 1. We're only 5 games into the season. To answer your question about a pipeline, yes, they are developing a pipeline. I think the Giants will have Wink next year. Barring anything crazy happening, he'll be back. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about that just yet, because here's the thing. We were all singing the praises of Ben McAdoo and the job he did his first year as a head coach, and then the bottom dropped out. I am not saying that's what's going to happen with Dable, but I think we probably want to make sure that the Giants can sustain the success that they've had so far before we go crazy and start, linking guys to, assistant coaches to head coaching vacancies. So just my 2 cents on that matter. All right. Next, we hear from Chris Fredericks. After the Ravens, next 4 teams have a combined 6 wins. Is 9-2 realistic, or are we getting ahead of ourselves? We're getting ahead of ourselves, Chris. Take it 1 week at a time, right? You don't know who's going to be injured, who's going to be available. this is why I don't like to do predictions too far out in advance. I know I have to do them. I do them for Giants country where, predict the season record and all that stuff. I don't like doing them for this very same reason. I like to deal with absolutes, not speculate too much. But look, anything's possible, any given Sunday and all that jazz. Um, you never know. So I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say yes. I am going to agree with you that we're getting ahead of ourselves. So take that for what it's worth. All right, we've got one more question. This is from a guy or gal who calls themselves "Please look off from this hellhole." All right. Um, all right, I gotta be honest. I don't understand this question. Is there any behavior the new coaching staff has been doing that you're concerned now about or think could turn into a problem in the future if it continues? I really don't know what you're getting at. I mean, what kind of behavior? Um, are you talking about, I don't know, maybe somebody leaking to the media? Are you talking about something more, scandalous? I don't understand your question. I mean, from what I could see, there's nobody on the coaching staff that isn't taking his or her job seriously, isn't giving a 100% effort into his or her job. So, this is me from the outside looking in. I don't see any problems. But then again, I'm not there in the building behind closed doors when those coaches sit down and have meetings. But here's what I will say. Brian Dable has set up a system to where everybody gets ownership. They have a piece of ownership. And when you do that as a boss, that's generally a good thing because now if you have a piece of ownership, you're going to take more pride, maybe a little bit more pride than if you didn't have that ownership in the results and the outcome. So I like the approach that Dable's taken. So far, it seems to be working, but we'll see. I don't know of any, bad behavior, but again, I'm not really sure what you were getting at with that question. So I did the best I could with it. But thanks for that question. All right, Giant fans, that is going to do it for us here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. Some great questions that came in. If you want to participate in future Twitter Tuesday mailbags, the information's in the show notes. You can tweet your questions to me at Patricia_Traina, Traina. You can send them via email to LockedOnGiantsPodcast@gmail.com. You can, post them on the message boards if you watch on YouTube. And again, if I missed your question, if it probably came in too late after I finished recording this. So always, send the questions in anyway, and I'll pick them up over on giantscountry.com when I do my weekly mailbags on a Saturday morning. So hope you enjoyed the program. Again, make sure you tune in tomorrow to the Locked On Giants podcast. Going to have a new episode and hopefully going to have that player interview, that former player interview that I spoke about. I think you'll enjoy it. I know it's going to be a fun one, assuming everything falls into place. So, all right, now that you have finished listening to the Locked On Giants podcast, made it your first listen of the day, make your second listen the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Giant fans, we will talk to you tomorrow again. This is Patricia Traina signing off. Have a great one, everybody.